This is Wesley.
And this is Shane.
And we would like to welcome you to the UnderGround Geek Shack.
Hey, do you want to know something?
Sure, what?
What do you call a series that's about augmented humans in society?
Tokyo Ghoul.
No, Choujin X.
Dang it.
I guess that kind of leads us to what we're talking about. Very shakily, but I got to do it. I finally got to do it. Your other co-host can get over it now. She's not special anymore. Mine was bad, but at least I got to do it. But yeah, I guess this week we're talking about Choujin X.
Yeah. And this is actually by the same creator who wrote Tokyo Ghoul, which is Ishida?
Sui Ishida.
Okay.
Or Ishida Sui. I've heard pronunciations, so someone's gonna groan eventually, like, what are you saying?
It took me a minute to actually pronounce his name. I'm sitting here, like, even before we started, I'm like, Sui Ishida, Sui Ishida.
Sui Ishida, Ishida Sui. But yeah, it is his newest or latest series. I forgot to look up the date when it came out, which I may do that now.
Good.
Behind the lines, you know? Behind the lines, behind the scenes. Because I can't remember now. I believe it was in summer.
I'm pretty sure it was in summer, because it's still ongoing. Because, like, as of us doing this recording now we are up to 11 chapters.
Okay. So, it has been posting, or it has been, I guess posted or hosted. I'm trying to think of the best way that they
serialized.
Serialized. You can call it serialized, but it's also been posted to their website for a while now. But it's been serialized since May. May.
Okay.
Or for anyone seeing this out of order or out of time, May of 2021.
Yeah.
It is on a irregular serialization schedule, so we don't really have a set basis. Sometimes it's a month between, sometimes it's 2 weeks, a week. It's really based off of what Ishida wants to do.
Which I feel like is a better schedule.
Far better, which I know we'll get into that because there's a lot of history with this specific mangaka, even though he's really only had 2 series.
Yeah.
Like, become mainstream or publish mainstream.
Tokyo,
one of my favorites. I have a few that are like the select big mangaka, and he is one of them. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see him. As we all know, Tokyo Ghoul ended in like it was June or July of 2018.
I want to say probably July 2018. Yeah.
I looked that up, but it's gone now. But it's been a few years now since Tokyo Ghoul or the Tokyo Ghoul series itself ended.
Yeah. And plus coming off of the heels of Tokyo Ghoul.
Yeah.
To this.
So he at that time, Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re were weekly publications.
Yeah.
So that kind of led to this, which we'll get into. And I guess that kind of leads into our first big discussion. Is it Tokyo Ghoul? Is Choujin X just Tokyo Ghoul?
Like, at first when I was reading it, that's what I wanted to believe.
There's a lot of similarities, but there was a big debate when it first revealed that it was going to be a story set in the world of Tokyo Ghoul after Re.
Yeah. And
all the new weird changes, but no, it turned out, because it turned out that it wasn't. It was its own brand new story, because the way Ishida, like, teased his readers was, we first got confirmation way before when he was working on another project. It was Jack and Gene.
Yeah.
The Nintendo Switch game.
I think so. Yeah.
He did the art for it, and there was mention, and there was stuff on his Twitter, Sotonami, which if you want to see his stuff, him just drawing Sotonami is where you can go. That's where I go a lot. Okay. It is, of course, in Japanese.
Yeah.
You can translate it. I use the Google translation mode, which is not always great. You won't get very great things, but it's kind of nice. Yeah, you kind of see Ishida Sui's personality come out, and also you can see a lot of his just drawings. He posts a lot, but it originally aired there on Sotonami that he made mention of. He was working on something new.
Yeah.
I think now he has 2 Twitters. He has Sotonami and another one, I think. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've checked. Things are going, especially with Choujin X now out. I haven't checked in a while because it's also where you can find a lot of art that isn't in his manga of his characters still posted on his accounts. Originally released a teaser. Teaser image of the main character and what looked like a bird creature.
Yeah, because that was the first thing that we ever got.
Yeah, that was the first visual confirmation, and you immediately seeing it, you're like, yeah, that's Ishida's work. It's his art style, but it's gotten better.
Yeah. Like, when you first looked at it, like, when I first looked at it, I was like, okay, it's giving me some vibes of Tokyo Ghoul.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. But, like, at this time, we didn't know the name of it. We heard rumors that, like, it was something like superhuman something.
Yeah, Superhuman X, and then there was a few names thrown around.
Yeah.
And then it finally released. It was funny because no news or anything you'd think, because Tokyo Ghoul was widely loved and widely hated. It was one of those where it was people loved it and people hated it because it became mainstream, and then others just hated it because of Ishida's writing. I personally was in the other category, loved it.
Still getting my way through it, and I still love it.
I finished it when it originally released, but I've gone back occasionally to look at stuff like, oh my god, this is so good. But one of the biggest things right now with its release, now that it kind of came out, or back to the main thought before I go off of it, was it just released.
Yeah.
There was no build up, no nothing.
Like, it
was just
dropped on, because we have the Shonen Jump app, and so like it just dropped there, and I was totally shocked by it, because I was like, what in the world is this?
Yep. It just completely, it just out of the blue, it dropped. No one really knew, and everyone's like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
And then it was like months later until we would get another chapter, because I began to like, so was this a one shot? Was this something?
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought, like, at first, when it first dropped, I was like, okay, it's probably just a one shot. You know? And I remember, because I remember it dropped, and I was like, I need to probably tell Shane about this. So there, send you a text, yo, this just dropped.
My brother told me as soon as it dropped, it's like, hey, because we both use the same account, and he also likes Tokyo Ghoul. And he's like, hey, it's on, it's up. And then we waited for like 2 months and got the second one, and then I thought it was going to be bi-monthly.
That's what I thought too.
And then it just started doing it to where it's like bi-weekly, bi-monthly, monthly. It's just whenever Ishida feels like posting, which sounds really bad, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It does. I won't lie. The only negative aspect of his posting is that you tend to forget the story a little bit.
Yeah, because then you have to like read. You have to read back a little bit in order to figure out.
Which is fine though. Yeah. I have no problem with that. But there was a lot of comparison and a lot of people looking at like, so is this Tokyo Ghoul? Or I haven't seen a whole lot of negative.
I've just seen a whole lot of praise from it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of praise. I have seen some people try to compare it to Tokyo Ghoul, and while of course it's gonna have similarities, which we'll get into, it's made by the same person.
Yeah,
he has his own way of like style and own interests. So of course there's gonna be similarities. We're not gonna be purely like separate stories at times.
Yeah,
because even the main characters are kind of similar in their own way, but also vastly different. A lot of the characters are vastly different. And even the premise of it is vastly different. But the big consensus of, is it really just Tokyo Ghoul, but a new series? It's a weird, because I love the series. I do feel like it kind of recycles some stuff, but in a very artistic way.
Oh, yeah.
And it also just kind of turns on its head. But I think, no, I think it's its own thing and should be viewed as its own thing. Don't try to compare two of his series together.
Yeah.
Because that just kind of ruins the...
Plus, it's never actually a good thing. It's just like when something new's coming out, you don't want to sit there and be like, oh, but it's like this.
Yeah.
Nah.
It's
best to just leave it as its own.
Yeah. And it also ruins expectations. I think a lot of people were expecting something like Tokyo Ghoul.
Yeah.
And then we got something similar, but not quite Tokyo Ghoul. Which I like, though. It's him doing his thing, but he's advancing with it. And a lot of the writing actually has gotten better. His character work especially. He always had really good characters. But I feel like this one, we're still very early on with, again, like, where are we at? Like 12, 13 chapters?
I think we're in...
I think we're at 12.
Probably 12 chapters.
But we're only 12 chapters in, and the characters are already starting to be memorable.
Yeah, we're 12 chapters in, because the 12th chapter just dropped, like, today.
Yeah. So it's very much... You can look at it as the, I guess, successor to
Tokyo Ghoul.
Yeah, Tokyo Ghoul. But I think to like hard compare those two would be like a gross misconception, miscalculation of what the story is.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I guess that kind of leads us to similarities. There are a lot of similarities.
Oh. Definitely.
That's why I don't want to say that anyone that's like, well, this is like Tokyo Ghoul, or got their hopes up that it was going to be like Tokyo Ghoul. I can see why, because there are similarities, which Ishida explained in one of his interviews on Tokyo Ghoul that he himself felt like an outsider, because I don't know if you knew this, and I wish I brought the interview or printed it or something, brought it with me, because I don't even remember what it was. Now I just remember it was post Tokyo Ghoul revealed that he grew up, I think it was Christian?
I think so.
his family grew up that way, and he always felt like an outsider.
Yeah.
All his characters always feel.
I
like
heard
that.
about this one.
Yeah, all his characters always feel like that, and Choujin X is no different. With, I always want to say it's Tokyo, like Tokyo instead of Tokyo.
That's how it sounds.
It's so hard to pronounce. It's like the place, the person, what's going on. But I think it's Tokyo.
Yeah.
Tokyo is the same thing as Kaneki was. A little bit, in a harsh way to put it, a little bit cowardly.
Yeah, I was about to say, he seems a little bit more cowardly than Kaneki.
Kaneki was pretty bad too, but Tokyo kind of continues that Kaneki stereotype a little bit, or stereotype or archetype, I guess, if you don't want to use the term stereotype. There are very similar things. I do think, though, they explore different things, even though they're similar. Both are very much struggle with loneliness and decisiveness, but I feel like that's also the author himself dealing with trying to portray this type of thing, because he said a lot of his characters like reflect things that he's seen. And so, similarity is definitely the main characters feel very similar. I don't think Tokyo will get the same, like, Kaneki treatment. But it almost felt like it was going that route with only within that first chapter. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, is this dude about to be the Jason?
Yeah. And I guess they're very different, but they're very similar. I guess you brought that in the first chapter up. It again is a society that struggles with superhumans, but they're not flesh-eating superhumans. They are just abilities. They use different abilities that we've seen in the first chapter. The guy with the expanding neck after taking the shot. We've seen, I think it's Chandri?
I think so.
His smoke and flame ability.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because he was the first person.
Yeah, he sets that. That's why. Similarities is it will be dark. I have a feeling it will have that similar darkness that Tokyo Ghoul redid, because it immediately introduces you to a man just burning down a plane, and everyone inside, like, flesh is rending off a bone from the heat, and it's just or not rending, but slawing off the bone from heat, and it's like, alright.
You at first you wouldn't think, it's going down this route, until you just see fire. You're just like, oh, it's going down this route.
But there's a lot of similarities. A lot of the characters do have, in some ways, kind of remind you of Tokyo Ghoul characters. But again, it's not really just he's copying. It's, of course, like, things will be that way. There's gonna be characters
there's gonna be characters who are similar.
Similar.
In some ways,
it's the same writer. Yeah. It's like Tsukiyama is a great example of, he did one-shots beforehand, and Tsukiyama was in a complete another series that he didn't publish, so he just picked him up and put him there. So you'll see aspects of the characters kind of slowly reappear, but that's not like a bad thing. It is his writing style and how he likes to do characters. And even then, you still see different sides. Like Chandri is a great example of, you can immediately try to link it to like Tsukiyama, but that would be a really bad comparison. It's really not. He's his own thing. He has his own flamboyant tendencies, and he's more worried about like finding a successor. Yeah. And that, I think, is what makes it so good. Is there are similarities, but there's enough that it feels like a writing style is kind of evolving and pushing to somewhere else.
Oh yeah.
And I like that, because there are similar things. Of course, you have a society that kind of, like the CCG, kind of deals with the Choujins. Yeah. But instead of just humans against, it's Choujins against Choujins. Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept too.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, we're like with Tokyo Ghoul, how we have the doves and the ghouls, and it's just like, we need to get if we were siding with the doves, we need to get the ghouls out of here to protect the rest of society. Whereas with Choujin X, it's like, no, I want to see how you two are gonna duke it out.
Yeah, it's just it's like, I wonder how that's going. That I think it's gonna be the same way with Choujin X, but I feel like it's gonna be a little different as well. Because Choujin Society, Tokyo joins it, to learn to be better. Yeah, kind of like how Kaneki joins not to be lonely. Yeah. And so, but I feel like there's definitely very different things at play. And it's like, the only other real big similarity I want to point out is we have a quote unquote villain. Really don't know anything about him. Yeah. The one with the mask. Yeah. I find that so interesting, because both series have had kind of like a devil-esque figure, or a what is it? I forgot the specific devil's name now. Faust, like a Faustian type of figure who like tests things, or because Furuta was Tokyo Ghoul's kind of Faustian, like, hey, I'm gonna have a little bit of fun at their expenses. Yeah. This one we don't know it. Of course, we're too early on to know what he's going to do, so I won't draw the Furuta comparisons. Mm-hmm. But I do find it interesting that we have this single character doing something that causes problems. And I'm really excited to see, because the whole mask and everything. I thought that wasn't a mask at first. I thought that's what the character looked like.
You thought that was his face?
I was like, what the what? And it was a mask. You see it later on that it's just a mask. And I think that's cool. He likes to do that type of thing. Yeah. But that's where like a lot of my similarities, I draw similarities, are very much kind of stop. Is there are a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences too. Like, again, Kaneki's was lonely and decisiveness.
Because I was gonna say that, like with Tokyo, even though we have, Tokyo as our main character, but we also have his friend, and it's just like, you see that Tokyo's always like, oh, well, what would he do? Yeah. Instead of, oh, this is what I need to do, he's basing more of anything that his friend does to basically trying to boost himself up.
That's the weird part, or where the differences I think come really great in for the main characters is they're similar. Kaneki was indecisive and didn't know what he should do. He was always stuck between doing this or doing this. Yeah. Tokyo, same way, but he's the opposite side. He's, I should always do what someone else tells me. It's better that way. And we're already seeing him, and of course it's going to be in Ishida fashion, where it's not going to be a clear-cut road and it's going to be very bumpy and he's going to have ups and downs, but we're seeing him try to learn to make decisions on his own. Yeah. You see that kind of early on with his friend. I can't remember the friend's name to save my life. But
we're both drawing blanks there.
There's so many characters that I still have to learn the names of, because, as I said, at the moment, you and I, this is just a perspective of the series as we've seen it so far come out, and it's been out again since May, so we're trying to gauge it, see what we're thinking, but there's a lot of differences too. Like, Tokyo is more or less, I think, trying to figure out his path instead of relying on others. We see that with his friend. He just eventually is like, hey, I'm sorry, I relied on you.
And then, even his friend just snaps, and he's just like, get out of here. And I'm like, oh, hey! Yeah.
And there is a lot of questions of loneliness and decision. What are you doing this for? What should be your purpose? Yeah. And, of course, I have a feeling he'll find his purpose to fill it out. It's going to take a while. But there's... The difference is, like, I like that he's doing a society that knows Choujins exist and lives with them. But also, like, the ones that do it, like, use their powers for, like, more selfish reasonings, or I don't even say selfish, but like kind of do more of the bad choices are villainized.
Well, the ones that do it for other people is more towards the good side of things.
But I do like he still explores isolation of or dehumanization, because right now where I'm at in chapter 9, we get introduced to a character that was really good at baseball. Yeah. And because he was found out to be a Choujin, Choujin are not allowed to play the same game as normal people because it's seen as an unfair advantage.
So then he had to quit baseball.
He was forced.
I kind of felt bad for him when it came to that. I was like, that's kind of messed up, though.
Yeah, and I feel like it's taking, again, the Tokyo Ghoul thing, but it's doing something different. It's more of two groups that have, like, that coexist together, not quite peacefully, we won't say peacefully, but, are, like, it's kind of doing what Tokyo Ghoul was getting to toward the end, but it's starting that way, and we're either going to see it try to draw closer, probably be frayed by, conflict, because if you have one thing and then never mess with it, your story gets a little boring, and Ishida loves conflict.
I mean, most of the stories that you and me have written, you kind of have to have conflict.
Yeah, you have to have conflict. So I think we're going to see that, like, frayed. We're going to see the opposite of Tokyo Ghoul, where they're trying to bring it together. Yeah. We're going to see it fray apart and then be fixed, or something of that nature, or the balance be put into question, and it's kind of what they have to do. But I think that's where the big differences lie, is it takes some of the formula we've seen before, but it does its own things. Oh, yeah. The Choujin themselves are very different from ghouls.
Which is one thing that I do like, is the fact that everyone has their own, I guess, diversity.
Yeah. Of it. And I won't go too far into it, because, again, we haven't been really taught a whole lot on Choujin abilities. We know there are types, like Beast type and, like, Elemental type. We've seen that. So it's not really like ghouls, who had 4 main categories, and then you find out later that those categories can be broken by imagination, which was cool, but it also made kind of understanding who had what's going on, what type that was, kind of get confusing. Yeah. And so we've seen beast types. We've seen that beast types can be really strong, and of course, our main character with the protagonist syndrome got a beast type that we're still neglected to be shown, and I like that Ishida does that. It's like a teasing, but yeah, we're still kind of to the point where we don't know enough about the whole system of Choujins to like say, hey, this isn't like Tokyo Ghoul, but from what we've seen, it's very much there's different types you can get, and then of course the big thing, they don't rely on eating people. And I like that because we're also seeing body enhancement types. The girl with the Choujin force, I don't know the force's name. I can't recall it at the moment, but the one that's like super strong. She's like, hey, don't look.
And she just lifts.
Throws it. We see that there's physical types. There's others that change your appearance, just as Ume. Yeah. The Octopus Man, or I think it's Octopus Man, or I got them mixed up. Or Ume's the other one.
I think so. Yeah.
With Octopus Man, but it's interesting. And it's not like starkly like, oh, these are bad, society good, and then you find out society bad, these are good. Okay. Yeah. And they're still bad and all. It's like, it's more of a flat ground than what Tokyo Ghoul originally started with, which I like because it's going to explore a lot. But one of the big differences, too, I saw while reading was there's a lot more humor in Choujin X. There's grim humor, which Tokyo Ghoul did, but it seemed to be when characters were kind of losing their minds. Yeah. There's a scene, like, early on when Chandri's chasing the little girl and, like, a biker... He gets the biker gang. The sheep the cryptic biker gang. Because he said that, like... Them.
Didn't he say, like, he was going to give them, like, a flip phone?
Yeah, something like that. And it's, like, dumb reasoning, but it's funny. And they're like, hey, we'll do it. And then they all end up off of, like, a roadside. And you just see a bunch of them, like, begin the diving formation. Just like, well, it's been a good run, boys. Yep. And it's funny. And I think that's the one thing that I both like and like have some problems with is some of the humor feels. I understand it's manga, it's fantasy. Some of it feels very unrealistic and weird, but I kind of like that. He's starting to explore weird like artistic ways of portraying things.
At least it gets me to laugh.
Or senses of humor, and it's like you still laugh. Like again, I absolutely love the moment where the dude with the sheep's head's just like, I accept this, here we go. And he's full sending to the bottom a concrete like slab. And I think that's the biggest thing is there was humor in Tokyo Ghoul, but there's a lot more humor, or he's playing with seriousness and humor far more in Choujin X, and I think that's really nice and interesting.
Or even the fact of like when we realize that Tokyo can talk to birds, you're just like, what?
The pigeons start giving life advice. Yep. Yeah, it's like, great bread giver.
And you're just like, what is going on here?
Oh man, yeah.
Or like even like in the zoo and all the animals are like, yeah, he ain't gonna make it.
Yeah, you hear the birds like, oh, he's gonna die, and it just makes Tokyo's whole mentality worse. Yep. And so yeah, I like that he's exploring a lot more things and trying more humor. I kind of like his seriousness a little more, but I understand if it was seriousness all the time, there would be a problem. Yeah. But so he is trying to do something. There are some times where the reasoning doesn't, again, like, I'll give you flip phones. Yeah. Cool! And they end up full sending, like, that part bugged me a little bit. The whole, them accepting, like, it's been a good run, boss. Yep. Alley-oop is, or they're like, whoop! Yep. Like the noises you make when you go to dive, like the comedic noises people put. Thought that was great. I thought that was funny. And then there's a few others where it's just it's funny, like the small girl seeing the square face beauty, and it's so funny, and I like that he is not afraid to play with things. Yeah. And I guess that's why I say while it is similar to Tokyo Ghoul, don't let that like muddle how you see it. Yeah. Give it its own chance.
Oh, definitely.
Because I guess this kind of, unless you have any more differences you'd like to share. Any big things that pop out to you? Like, the humor was the biggest for me.
Yeah, the humor was... It's weird, because, like, my mind keeps going back to the chase scene in the zoo. And I'm just like... Because, like, at first you're just like, okay, he's going... Like, Tokyo's going to the zoo, you know, to try and find the... What was it? The vulture that was there when he was a kid. And you're just like, okay. And then come to find out that this other chick just shows up, you're like... Who the heck are you?
Yeah, she's hunting him, but he doesn't know it.
Like, it just sets everything up, like, in a mystery kind of way. And then you're just like, okay, and then when you sit there and you're just like, are these two gonna sit here and like kiss each other? And then you just see a snake just come out of nowhere. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
You're just like,
yeah, it definitely. It stops the whole Rize, because I know people, or I know my brother tried to make the Rize comparison to the snake chick, and I was just like, it didn't go that way. I was like, oh, good, he's doing something else. But yeah, and that's why it kind of leads me into, like, I guess one of our biggest topics for this is why is it important Choujin X is out now, and why it's different from Tokyo Ghoul. As we kind of know, the ending of Tokyo Ghoul or in my opinion, kind of lacked a bit from the rest of the series. The rest of the series, like, took its time, was patient, evolved everything out, and then when you kind of get to, like, I think it's after Kaneki's return up until him and Toka get together.
Then it starts to go.
Yeah, after that, it starts going downhill. Yeah. Like, you can tell there's a quality change, and it turns out he got burnt out. Yeah. Because he'd been doing for so long monthly releases that he became burnt out and felt like, oh, well, I just don't want to do this anymore. And if I stop, I'll never come back to it. Yeah. And that's why I think Choujin X is so important, because it shows he's back. Oh, he's experimenting with what he's comfortable with. Because he's also said Choujin X should be about the length of, or roughly around, or a little more, than the first half of Tokyo Ghoul, which was like 145 or 47 chapters, somewhere in that range. Or 48. It was somewhere from 45 to 48 chapters. Yeah. And he's playing with it because he doesn't like long running forms of stories. Yeah. He tried it with Tokyo Ghoul, and Tokyo Ghoul learned from it. Now Choujin X is his next attempt. And I like it because it's him trying to fight burnout. Yeah. Which a lot of mangaka here are now lately have had that. We're not Oda. Yeah. No one's Oda, who just 30 years of I can keep going. Yeah. No break.
Always coming up with different things.
Yeah,
you're just
weekly.
You're just like, how are you doing this, my guy?
Not everyone's like Oda, and we have to kind of accept that. Some mangaka burn out easily, some mangaka, like Oda, don't even understand what that word is. Yeah. And this is him kind of finding his own ways to stop it. That's why his irregular serialization does not bother me. I think that it is a good way for him to feel around and learn what's good for him and what he's doing.
That's why I think the schedule that he's on right now is really good, because it's not like it's a weekly thing where he's like always having to crank all these different pages out. He can actually take his time and figure out what he wants it to be. Yeah,
and I think that's why, because the Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re will forever be my favorite series, but it has an ending that let me down. Yeah. I got over that. It's still a great series. There's, like, the writing is still phenomenal. But Choujin X is kind of back to that original style of writing, of it feels flushed out, the world feels good. Yeah. And I absolutely love that, and that's why I think Choujin X is a very important piece to look at in Ishida's work, because it shows Ishida kind of coming to terms with what happened and learning from it and growing as a mangaka.
I guess, and that's the best thing that any, like, whether you're a mangaka, whether you're an artist, or even if you're just a regular writer like the two of us. Because, like, we've made mistakes when writing, and the best thing that you can do is learn from it. You take those mistakes that you made, and you just capitalize on it and just keep on moving.
And I think that's why, is it's him learning how to keep himself from doing that. Because, again, we've run into the issue where a lot of authors are like, I don't feel the same way about my series. We had, I forgot his name. Wow, there's a lot of I forgots today. The writer of Vagabond. Okay. Just finally went, I'm done. Which is funny because me and my brother's on that is the style of, that's what the story of Vagabond is learning to let go and finding what you like. Yeah. And then mid-Vagabond, that's what the author does. So, which I can't blame him. It's whatever he wants. It's his series. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you can't make a mangaka finish the series. This shows Ishida Sui loving mangaka as like an art form or as a medium and trying to like figure out what works for him. So I think Choujin X is a very important piece because it's his growth. Yeah. And his art, his writing are coming back full swing, and it feels good. And I guess that leads to the final thing. Our verdicts on it. What do you think about the series?
Seeing as we're still within the beginning
so far, as of the 12, I should rephrase that in a better way. As of the 12 chapters we have now, what are your feelings on it?
we slowly getting up this hill. I like it so far.
Yeah, it definitely. That first chapter, 100-page or 80-page chapter, caught me off.
Definitely. I think it wasn't. Was it 100? Was it 80? Or was it?
It was somewhere in the range of 80 to 100.
Yeah. Because that amount of pages totally caught me off guard.
Oh, man. Yeah, because I didn't expect a big one because of the burnout, and then he just surprised me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, my personal opinion for the 12 we've gotten, I love it so far. I think it won't fill the void or the space that Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re left, but I feel like it's its own work. Yeah. And it has its own space. Oh, yeah. So, I absolutely love it. Despite all the similarities and differences, I look at it as its own piece, as you should. Yeah. And so far, I'm enjoying it. Okay. I have some gripes about the series so far, but nothing can ever be perfect. Yeah. And those gripes are, like, minute in comparison to what I absolutely enjoy, and I really am looking forward to seeing more of the series as it goes.
Cool. So, yeah. So, I know we have to wrap up. Now I'm going to pass the question off to you guys. Have you guys read Choujin X? And what do you guys think about it? I think that's a good question.
Yeah, I think it sums it up. I mean, they're going to tell us anyway. Yeah. It's good to at least get some involvement. Participation is nice. Yeah.
Well, guys, that's it from us. We hope you guys have enjoyed your visit to the UnderGround Geek Shack. See you guys.